Welcome back to another episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast. After learning more about the rise in digital nomad visas and how countries all over the world are boosting their economies by inviting remote workers to work in their country with a better standard of life, I wanted to learn more about this trend in much more detail, especially as distributed teams and the ability to work from any device, any location, any network, at any time. As that becomes standard, I've invited Spencer Pitts, VMware's Digital Workspace Chief Technologist, onto the podcast to learn more about this. And especially as the world continues to adapt to new ways of working, it was research from VMware that appeared on my radar as it uncovered significant divide between the attitudes of organisations and their employees towards anywhere working. For example, 66% of employers in EMEA believe that it hampers innovation and they want to get people in a room to innovate. But there is a clear disconnect compared to the 81% of employees who report higher job satisfaction and they enjoy the flexibility to work from anywhere. So in today's episode, Spencer is going to unravel what he calls the innovation conundrum in the hybrid workplace. And he's going to shed light on some pretty harsh truths that businesses must face when it comes to fostering innovation among their employees. And we're going to delve into a range of topics, including the paradigm shift in employee power that's dividing trends like quiet quitting and the subsequent talent shortage, and how a digital-first approach to productivity can encourage innovation while enabling employees to work in a place that better suits them. And if we've got time, we'll also talk about the importance of prioritising the digital employee experience and leveraging technology to provide tailored experience based on your demographic and role, because there is no such thing as a cookie-cutter, one-size-fits-all approach to all of this. And of course, we will also have to touch on the security problem in the world of hybrid working while optimising employee experience. It is an incredibly tricky balance. So this is a conversation you won't want to miss. It will be relevant to you in whatever industry you work in as we all collectively navigate the complex world of remote and hybrid work and attempt to uncover the keys to balancing innovation, efficiency and employee morale. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Brighton here in the UK, where Spencer Pitts from VMware is going to talk about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Spencer. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Great to be here, number one. Good to meet you again, Neil. I'm Spencer Pitts. I'm the Chief Technologist. So what does that mean? So I kind of do a lot of stuff like this, actually, as it happens, and also going out and speaking to some of our biggest customers around their strategies, specifically around the subject of digital workspace. So all things to do with end user computing, especially given what's going on with hybrid working at the moment. And I've been with VMware for coming up to 16 years, actually. And before that, I used to work for part of a bank. So company and a half and end-user computing all the way through my IT career, I think.
Fantastic. One of the reasons I invited you back on the podcast is to shed some light on some of the research I was reading from VMware that shows a real rift between employer and employee attitudes towards anywhere working. And I've recently been to Estonia, where they're encouraging people from all over the world to work there. There's a rise in digital nomad visas all across the world. And I think it's giving employees a new kind of expectation for the future of work, which obviously contradicts with the employers. So I'm curious, can you talk a little bit more about that research, about that rift, and what you think is causing this disparity in perspectives?
Yeah, so we do a bit of research. We do lots of third-party commissioned research. And this one we specifically done, actually, it's the fourth one. So not that I want to mention the pandemic too much, but we did one that was just before the pandemic, and then we did one that was kind of a little bit in, so maybe 6-9 months in, and then another one as we was coming out of the back of it, and this one recently afterwards. So it's the fourth one we've done. It's about 5,500 people globally, wow. 2-ish thousand in Europe, and it's interesting because we speak to end users, or people consuming IT services, if you want, inside companies, and HR, but also the business leaders as well. So it's a nice balance between, the people that run the company versus the ones that you could argue actually help the company be run, right? So, we went out to them, spoke to them and asked them, well, the main bit around it was, do you feel more productive when you're in the office or versus when you're working at home? So it was a whole sort of deep dive into the different behaviours, what's causing that, some of the thinking. And one of the biggest things that we came out of it was a bit of a disconnect between the leaders, who are more sort of prone to thinking that people should come back to the office, and they think that innovation happens more in the office. Although, interestingly, the employees themselves also thought that sometimes they were more, how can I put it, better to be together, collaborating and innovating when they're in the office or in physical space. But at the same time, they also thought that they had a better, work-life balance, and morale was better, and they were more wanting to be productive when they had a hybrid policy. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy between, actually, we think we get things done better in the office when we're all together, versus actually I quite like my life working from home when I'm doing that. So there's a bit of a zero-sum conundrum kind of going on between those two.
And some of the stats from that report now, I think it was 81% of employees have higher job satisfaction when they feel they can work from anywhere. And on the flip side, 66% of employers in EMEA believe that it actually harms innovation. So can you tell me a little bit more about this innovation conundrum in the hybrid workplace, and how businesses can address it ultimately too?
Yeah, so I sort of briefly touched on it there. I mean, the employers themselves and the people, or the decision makers, the way we label them inside there, they were saying that they think that if everybody's remote, you can't get the teams together, they're not sort of talking to each other, and if they want to do things, I'll give the example of, like flip charts and everybody getting around a whiteboard and putting post-it notes on, etc. But how do you do that when you're all remote? People think, and the employers think themselves, that if you get in the office, you're more likely to come up with better ideas. And what's interesting there as well, and one of the things I didn't say when we introduced the research, is it depends on the vertical as well. There was some differences in that. So if you think about financial services versus, car manufacturing companies or automotive or manufacturing, some of the requirements there, if you think about the different job personas, etc., there's some differences. But ultimately at the top level, it was, come into the office. We think that you're more likely to talk to each other and get things done, in effect, from a leadership perspective. But I actually thought then, well, does that mean that people, the end users themselves, do they think that? But interestingly, they also thought that they were more innovative when they were in the office. But to what I just said before, when they were working at home, they felt they had a higher sense of morale, higher productivity at home, better sort of work-life balance. So it's an interesting one there because, let's be honest, given what's going on at the moment with, let's call it, I'm not going to call it war on talent. I'm not quite liking that term, but there's a lot of demand out there for people. So it's kind of sort of gets into that scenario about what do employers need to think about. Yeah, get them in the office, they're better. But if they think that they can work better at home and there's another employer that's offering that, whereas you may not be, are they more likely to go off and go and work somewhere else? It's kind of then leading into that scenario around how employers attract and keep people working for them, right?
Yeah, 100%. And as you said, there is a well-documented huge tech skill shortage, which did lead to quiet quitting, where people were gradually leaving the workplace and searching other opportunities. Then we've seen headlines of tech layoffs, etc., around the world. So can you explain that trend of quiet quitting and the role it plays in talent shortages, and how has the paradigm shift in employer power contributed to that phenomenon? Is there anything you're seeing around this?
Yeah, it's interesting with quiet quitting, isn't it? I think I'm old enough to know, I think that was called work to rule back in the 80s and 90s. I think there's another, right? We like these new terms, don't we? But anyway, I mean, you're right. I think definitely through the pandemic, we definitely saw that people didn't want to move jobs. There was uncertainty, etc. there. And just before then, we did start to see that employees had the upper hand. For every, I can't remember the exact stat, but for every job that they went for, the employers were, well, let's put it this way, you had the choice of doing it in a company. You could take your pick. So the balance was definitely on the employee. And that meant that employers needed to offer other things above and beyond just standard, rations. And what we started to see there was, people offering new sort of, I'm going to put it, perks. I mean, I take VMware, I've been lucky, 16 years here. They offer a lot of other things on top of just base pay and rations. And that is all around to try and keep you there and to keep the talent in. Because they also know that if you do leave, the cost to the business around getting new people in and getting them productive and ramping up their their skill set, etc., that's a big problem, right? And that's a cost to the underlying business. So with VMware, we do a lot of things to try and keep us motivated, to try and keep us part of the company. We have things called Epic Days, which sort of came out of the pandemic, to be fair, when burnout was there, and when people were just doing too much, day to day, every day on Zoom, 9 till 5 and plus as well. So I think there's a whole thing around, we've seen some lessons when people have been working remotely, and then also at the same time, the fact that there was so many people going for jobs and they could pretty much take the pick of, so the employers needed to offer other things on top. Now what we're starting to see, though, is there is a little bit of, with the economic uncertainty coming in, that maybe the balance is slightly shifted again. But yeah, it's an interesting level to it. But by and behold, we still think that the employers have got the upper hand here as well, right? So that's adding to that. Actually, if you just don't really want to sort of work anymore, and you just sort of work to rule, go back to doing the bare minimums, then are you really going to get, fired by your job because nobody really wants to get rid of you? So you're more likely to get away with that kind of stuff, I guess, is what's going on there.
And there is a school of thought that a digital-first approach, though, especially towards productivity, can better promote innovation while also still allowing employees to work in the most suitable locations for them and where they feel they thrive the most. Is that something that you're seeing, and can you expand on this digital-first approach to productivity and how that can help?
Yeah, I mean, we've been pushing a digital-first approach, because let's be honest, again, the last 3 years really highlighted the fact that you probably need tools and digital type capabilities that allow you to work from anywhere. I don't think anybody would deny that, right?
Yeah.
3-4 years ago, maybe remote was seen as a bit of a perk in the minority, but definitely we realized that you need to do that and have the core capabilities. So a lot of companies have gone through that, right? I need to think about, when I first join as an employee, what are the tools that I need to be able to do this anywhere? So the fact that they think that they're more productive in the office, they can't rely on that now. They still need to be able to enable everybody wherever they are. And now that's got benefits. Now, if you think about a multinational company, so we've got quite a few, I can't probably name them, but we've got quite a few manufacturing companies. And we've got a particular tool in our arsenal, so to speak, that allows a developer who's making cars and a designer with another one that are completely separate in the world, right? Now, typically, again, like I said before, you need to bring them together because that's where we think innovation would happen. We've got capabilities where you can share the screen, they can interact simultaneously with the mouse and the keyboard. So even though they're not in the room, there's a lot of things we can do to almost make that productivity as best it could be, given that they're not, physically in the same place. So then you think to yourself, okay, if I can attract people now, or if I can get them to work completely separate in the world, I can go and dip into talent pools in different countries, right? Because that whole being in the office would require, you need to be near the office for people to get into it. Otherwise, you think about how long it takes to travel and the sustainability aspects of that as well. I think there's a lot of good things we can do now that we can get into other markets we probably wouldn't been able to before. And actually, there are some bits of innovation that can still happen. There might be some that still need to happen specifically in the office or in the physical workplace, but it doesn't mean you can't do anything else remotely. So yeah, a lot of digital type tools can help to promote that. And then things like VR, XR, with the headsets, etc. Obviously, things like collaboration tools that we've all been used to using forever and a day now, it feels like. They're also adding to it. But I think there's a lot of other things you can do with digital. There is the second bit, and not to labour this point too much as well, though, is when people are remotely, then you need to think about how you keep them engaged. Yeah. So when you're thinking about that, it's all about comms, right? And it's also about the fact that if your, say, senior leader is on camera and is always on these kind of events and is very, able to be seen by the rest of the team, there's a lot of sort of research that we did before and some of the other ones, commission reports that say, if you've got a leader that's, sort of leads by example about using these tools, and everybody in the company is more likely to use them as well. So there's a bit of an effect there as well. But comms, how you keep people, working and removing some of their menial tasks that they have to do every day. So there's a lot of capability in digital tools, automation, that can help around that to make people's lives easier. I'm not going to stray into the old AI and ChatGPT. Maybe that's a discussion for another day. But definitely some automation type tooling can help people in their day-to-day roles when they're working remotely, right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you brought that up, because if we go back, just 2 years ago, it seemed almost overnight that there were many people that were recruited online, they were onboarded online, they're working alongside colleagues that they've not actually met in person, and probably didn't meet them in person for another 12 months. And it's very difficult to keep staff engaged in that kind of environment and make them feel important and a valued part of the organisation. So can you expand on why it's crucial for businesses to prioritise that digital employee experience? And what role do you see technology playing in offering a more tailored experience based on the demographics and the roles that they're working?
Yeah, and that's where that link with HR comes in as well. I've done quite a few events recently and spoken at some sort of conferences around this with HR, IT, and the business teams in the audience at the same time. And I think what's interesting before is so when I first started, which feels like ages ago, well, it was ages ago. I didn't have grey hair then, I think. But, IT was like, we used to be in a separate room downstairs. There was a lock, there was a code that you could get into our room, and we sort of locked ourselves away. And we treated the users a little bit like, well, it's our kit. You need to sign your life away when you first join the company to say you won't do anything bad about it. And I'll be honest with you, the skill set of the people that were using the tech, we knew a lot more than they did back in the day. And that's changed now, right? There's been a complete sort of, the other way around. So IT's had to be more front and center. But at the same time, now it also, and I sort of touched on this before as well, when you join a company, a lot around the technology you're going to get used, and that goes hand in hand with the work policy, whether it's hybrid, office only. Clearly, depending on what your job function is, that might be slightly different. For instance, if I'm on a production line, I can't really do that at home, can I? Yeah. But that doesn't mean that we can't do stuff for you when you are at home, which I'll get into in a second as well. But the point here, I think, is that HR and IT need to come together to think about onboarding, depending on what the role is, right? So maybe I could be onboarding at home. There were a lot of people in VMware that came in. And there was a guy, I hadn't physically met him. I'm sure he was 6'6", and when I met him, he was actually 5'7". Not that height is an issue, but I really, for some reason, thought he was, because I hadn't seen his legs ever, which sounds weird when you say it like that, right? But yeah, I had no idea. But he had a great onboarding experience. We tried to do, you can't get him physically in the office to meet his manager, but we did everything else possible to make sure that he was productive as soon as possible. We had a device that was, he had a couple of devices shipped to him. We had this hold out the box experience to get you up and running quickly. We even put some extra little touches on there to say, that it was a branded VMware box to make it didn't just feel like we've given you any old machine. It almost made it feel like we tailored it to his or hers requirements a bit more, and we thought about it. And it's kind of like, oh, the company really likes me. Like, oh, look at this extra effort they're going to. This is not like other companies I've been to. And that's a really subtle point, but I think something that really can help with the whole sort of employee power shift is it isn't just about paying them money, or of course at the moment I think nobody's going to take a pay cut for obvious reasons, but at the same time, what extra things can you offer? And that's where HR needs to think. They need to come together to make sure the onboarding experience is really nice. Once you're out there and you're working at home, how do I keep you engaged? What's going on? Does the CEO need to come on and tell us how great the company's doing? How do I keep you engaged? Because a lot of that stuff went out the window when you wasn't physically in the office, and all of those, maybe going around I don't know why I'm pointing here, I've got a whiteboard that you can't see, but a comms board when you go to the coffee machine and there's maybe it's a quiz night in the local pub that everybody can come to or something. Those kind of subtle other things that make people feel part of the company culture and the other things that go around it, they're the things that it's quite hard to sort of replicate. So having tools and things that you can send information out to people, maybe it's, there's some new training coming up. There's a online, come together and you can all do an escape room or whatever it is. We can all, those kind of things I think are really important, and digital can really help there. But it's also understanding, like I say, the job function. Because otherwise you might end up getting this almost two-tier type workforce, where those that are lucky that can work remotely, whereas those that feel that they have to come to the workplace, and there's a balance there to be had. And we've got some great, examples that we've done at VMware with companies around that as well, by the way. Yeah. A long-winded answer, but hopefully it made sense.
No, not at all. I think you've highlighted the problem perfectly, and I think your words will resonate with everyone listening, and there'll be a lot of people nodding their head in agreement, and I think it's a universal experience that we've all endured over the last 3 years. And As we go into solution mode, though, are there any examples or strategies that you could share for collecting, employee sentiment data or any way of maintaining a high-quality employee experience in a hybrid work environment? We'd love to find out if there's any kind of solution or anything that we could be doing differently to improve everything we're talking about.
Well, clearly the answer is VMware, but that aside, if we start off from things that you need, and I'll go back to, and I'm sure, well, it depends what company you work for, but you used to get these 6 monthly surveys coming from HR. I'm not sure if you've had one of those before, but a lot of companies do this where, all the departments come together and then maybe they're allowed 4 questions. So IT say, is the service good? What would you do better? And then suddenly they say, yeah, but I've got 6 other business units that all want 4 questions as well. Now that survey is going to be an hour. We don't want to make it an hour because we think people are not going to fit it in. So then people start to compromise on what the survey is. But if you think about that, that used to be one of the main ways that people at the top of the ladder, at least, could understand whether their employees are happy, whether they're likely to leave, and what the main issues are. Yet, you just heard me say that a lot of people were compromising on the questions they were asking. So that's a bit of an issue, isn't it? So I really need to know what's going on, especially now that people aren't in the office. Because typically you'd ask your managers to go, is John Smith and accounts okay? And clearly, if they came to the office, you could sort of check, and you all right, John? What's going on? There was a more of a sort of physical experience, if you want, where some of this stuff, you sort of filtered it up through your management train. Well, you can't really do that in the same way. Yes, you can get people to come onto Zoom with their managers and do one-to-ones, but trying to understand what's going on has become more important now that people aren't physically in the office all the time. So then that means, so 6 monthly surveys, are they still working? So I think they're not, and I think that we need to be sort of, there might be some big ones you do every now and again, but I think we need to have more targeted surveys that go out to people. And then think about it from this perspective as well. Should it be we do it 6 months afterwards when you've forgot what it was that you were really annoyed about, or there was something that was really good and I really liked that, but I can't remember now, it's 5 months ago or 6 months ago before you did the last survey. So it's how you capture stuff. And I think what we're doing here, and I know that the industry is kind of moving to this as well, we call them micro moments where you're getting real-time feedback from people. Maybe, an easy IT example would be, I just send out an update to your machine. It worked, great, right, okay. Did it get in the way of the user? Did the user experience downtime? Were they annoyed? So rather than waiting 6 months to get that feedback, why don't you send something after you've just done that? So we're looking at those capabilities in VMware as well to say, yes, we can manage machines and keep them up to date. It's kind of the bread and butter of what we do. But how do we then make sure that the user experience that's related to that, can we get any idea of what's going on? Did it cause them pain? Are they now really annoyed? Or was it brilliant? And they actually go, oh, that was amazing. I didn't know you even did it, but thanks for letting me know. So there's some things you can do there. And it all comes down to, like you just said in the question, I need to understand what's going on. And that got really, really hard when people were everywhere, all over the world. Because you could look after machines and how they interact with them and sort of understand what's going on. But when everybody's distributed, that gets really, really difficult to do. So you need sort of new capability. Model management is the one that a lot of people think about, but that's what we focus on. Being able to look after people wherever they are, whatever their job function is, wherever they're doing it. And more importantly, how they're doing it through their machines, right? And you need visibility of those.
And I think also, if I look back to my IT days, the big scary animal out there was bring your own device. That was the big thing that frightened the life out of IT. But now, of course, IT have to deal with every employee expecting to work on any device, any network, any location, at any time, which sounds like a security nightmare to me. But how can businesses elevate security in a world of hybrid working while also optimizing that employee experience? Because again, it's a difficult balance to achieve, isn't it?
It is, and I can think of like 9 or maybe more than that actually slides that I've seen from our internal business unit, PowerPoint slides that have some kind of seesaw or a balance, and you've got employees on the left-hand side and their experience, and then you've got security on the other side. Now, bearing in mind, I came from a world in banking where you lock everything down to the rafters, so to speak. And mainly because if it doesn't move and it doesn't change, then it's not likely to get infected or security breaches. So that's kind of been the model for ages. Yeah. To your point, that's a horrible user experience. Now, back in the day when IT ruled the roost, it was okay because nobody ever questioned it, but people are questioning it. More importantly, if it gets in the way of what they need to do when they're doing hybrid working, they're definitely going to question it. And like I said before, they might even say, you know what, I'm going to go to another business where they allow me to work on my home laptop or my own personal smartphone. And actually you don't. So look, these guys have got it sorted. I'm going to go and work for them. That's really important to me. I don't want to have to keep constantly inputting two-factor authentication tokens every 2 seconds. It kind of gets in the way of my work. So definitely we are seeing, and the main challenge here is that a lot of people found it hard to move from old ways of security models that were very much orientated around you being in a physical location with sort of defense walls around it, more to a sort of distributed model. And I'm going to use the term zero trust is the model that's been around for a long time, by the way, but it was never really a compelling event for it to really kick on. But now it's there. And the whole concept there is start off from whoever you are. We don't trust who you are, first of all. By the way, I think if you're ever going to make a project name called Zero Trust from IT, don't do it. Because if ever you want to annoy your users and you have it, we're rolling out Zero Trust because we have zero trust in our employees.
Yeah.
But the point there is it starts off, I don't care who you are, we're going to keep asking you and checking to make sure that you're trustworthy in terms of access to your systems, but in a way that doesn't get in the way of your work. I.e., we're not going to keep asking you for passwords and tokens and jumping through hoops to get to what you need to do. And that's that balance, I think, that you can do. And that's something that we push strongly at VMware as well. And I know the industry as a whole is working to. But I think we're a little ways away from customers being able to adopt that fully, and that's the journey they're on right now.
And another problem with the user experience, I think, when working remotely in distributed teams, there's almost a pressure to reply to those emails, not just 9 till 5, but if the boss emails at 11 o'clock at night. So there's almost this constant demand that you must always be available. And I think that can impact morale too. But given this ongoing debate around 4-day working weeks, how are you seeing companies balancing maximising efficiency and innovation, but without negatively impacting employee morale and satisfaction and burnout, which we mentioned very early on in the conversation today?
I think that's where that automation, I use those elusive words, or those current really trendy words like ChatGPT and AI.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we fully go down that right now, although there's a bigger discussion around it, but I definitely think this is where, sort of machine learning automation can come in. And what I mean by that is, at the heart of what we're doing from our platform, we think, well, if you're, let's say, take an IT administrator that needs to understand now multiple machines everywhere, lots of different telemetry coming in. How do I make sense of it all? Well, that's a perfect use case for using, tools out there that can correlate all that information and make better decisions. And that's at the heart of what we call our autonomous workspace. That has a benefit for the end user as well, which is if we can remove all of those things that are making problems. So a good example here is we got this, there's a battery that, a kind of telemetry, so we do a lot of stuff for logistics and warehouses and people using certain devices. And when they're out doing what they're doing with those devices, if that battery dies, they have to go back and get a new one, and that's downtime, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, if we could sort of proactively understand if that battery's going to die beforehand, then we could let the user know. The user can go, oh, okay, stop what I'm doing here. Or maybe if they're at home and the same thing happens, we can ship something proactively out to them to try and minimize it. I think there's a lot of things that we can do. It isn't just about tech, but tech has a leading role here to be able to help with, I mentioned comms out to people, where you keep people engaged and you let them know what's going on. But also, there's a lot of things that we can do to automate stuff, to get rid of all the menial tasks and make sure that we give them back. Let's say it's a driver and that's delivering parcels or something. We can give them back 20 minutes a day or something because of the fact we're minimizing all their interactions with really cumbersome IT systems. Well, that's going to have an effect, isn't it, right? You're going to make people more innovative and have more time to do stuff that they want to do and get rid of those really horrible menial tasks. I say horrible, depends on your point of view on that.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for coming on here, sharing your insights, experiences, and some of the trends that you're seeing affecting hybrid working right across the board in multiple industries. And before I let you go, I'm going to ask you to leave everyone listening with one other piece of wisdom, and that is a book for our Amazon wish list for listeners to check out. I always ask a guest to leave something for that list. All I'm going to ask is, what book are you going to leave us with and why?
Book called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. I think it's by Daniel Carnahan. I might have mispronounced his name there. To be fair, I actually got the book from a BBC Horizon program that says, why do we make the decisions we do? But it was based off that book. And it's all about how the brain works, around why we make decisions, why we have unconscious biases. And it's really helped me to understand other people and why they think and why I'm making the decisions I do. And it's been quite a good sort of barometer for me. Whenever I'm in a bad situation or I'm thinking that somebody might have said something, why did they do it? So it really makes you feel a bit empathetic to others, and it helps you especially in my life at home, as well as in the business world. And it's just really, really interesting. I love, reading about how the brain works, to be fair. I've got no idea how my brain works in particular, but I have a good idea how potentially others do now.
Oh, well, I'll get that added to the Amazon wish list straight away. And for anyone listening, just wanting to find out more information about VMware, maybe the report we've referenced today, or just contact your team, what's the best starting point for everything?
Yeah, so if you have a look at, VMware.com, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you do a search for that particular bit of research, it's called the Distributed Work Dilemma, when innovation and job satisfaction compete. I think if you just do a Google search for that as well, I'm sure we could send the links over, but yeah, just do a search for that. And inside VMware, if you look for the digital workspace as a particular solution area, a lot of the tools and the capabilities I mentioned are inside that. But you're right, reach out to me if you really want to on the social media platforms and all your local VMware representative. I'm sure they'll love to talk to you about it.
Awesome. Well, I'll add links to that, including the study there on the show notes, so people can find you nice and easy. I think we covered so much there, from delivering a few harsh truths that businesses must address with their employees, and also that paradigm shift in employee power has become a driving force between those recent trends like quiet quitting that we've all been reading about on LinkedIn, but also a few solutions there. How a digital-first approach to productivity can facilitate innovation while allowing people to do their parts of their role in the place that works for them, because we're all different here, and I think that's something that we need to remember as well. But just a big thank you for sharing that story with me today.
Problem. Thank you, Neil. Thanks for having me.
So as we wrap up today's episode of the Tech Talks Daily podcast, I want to thank our guest, Spencer Pitts from VMware, and thank him for providing us with such valuable insights into the hybrid workplace and the innovation conundrum. And I, for one, learned so much from our conversation today, including the importance of addressing that disconnect between leaders and employees when it comes to remote work, hybrid work and innovation. And also recognising and navigating the trend of quiet quitting in order to retain top talent. And also adopting that digital-first approach can dramatically improve productivity, promote innovation, while also giving the employees the flexibility to work in the most suitable locations to them and their personal needs. And I think it's that prioritising the digital employee experience by ensuring that both HR and IT collaborate on tailored onboarding and engagement strategies. That is where the magic happens. And of course, I am an ex-IT guy, so I've got to mention balancing security and employee experience through a zero trust model and leveraging real-time feedback to understand employee needs. Again, incredibly important. So you've heard from me, you've heard from today's guest, and I hope this discussion has provided you with a few insights and ideas to help you navigate these challenges around the hybrid workplace and help you maximise efficiency and innovation, but without compromising employee morale and causing burnout. So please, don't forget to check out the resources mentioned in today's episode, including VMware's website and research to the report that we talked about. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too. It's not just about me and today's guest. I know you're scattered all around the world and you've got a variety of unique experiences, insights and stories of what has worked for you and what hasn't worked for you. If we could put all these stories into one big melting pot, I think we can all learn together to move forward. I think we can all learn together. So as always, email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @NeilCHughes. We'll keep this conversation going. And if you think it's useful for anybody else out there, please share the episode with your friends and colleagues. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And if you've really enjoyed yourself, why not leave a rating and review to help the podcast in the battle against the AI algorithms too. But that's it for me, so stay curious, keep exploring the world of technology and the real-world impacts it can make for the better. And until next time, don't be a stranger.